Okay, well, Mr. Olson,
Hey
shall we
guys, you know what?
go?
Thanks for, I just started it right up because I know better than to try to do a pre-show discussion because we usually discuss it twice. So here we go.
All right.
And you got to give me permission too, Steve, to record this because it won't let me hit record here. It says I need your permission.
Oh, well, hey, why don't I give you permission?
Beautiful.
And there you go. And
All
we're
right.
all just sitting around the table right now for a second with two of my favorite YouTube creators, Rex Bear. Hi, Rex.
Hey, how's it going, Steve?
And R. Wayne Steiger. And this is Steve Olson with WSO. And we're all going to sit around here and talk about, I think we're going to start out by talking about human consciousness, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
All right, so Rex, here's what's really getting me. You and Wayne are hitting a nexus point, and then I wanted to get you guys together and just kind of, I want to actually interview both of you together, if you guys don't mind.
Sounds great. Let's go.
So
I'm ready.
My first question for you, Mr. Bear, is you have been challenging the status quo in terms of American, understanding of ancient Sumerian texts, the Emerald Book of Thoth, all of these different, kind of historical, archaeological elements that really cause us to have pause with the status quo of history. Is that true or not?
Sure. Absolutely it is. I mean, I think that one of the neat things about questioning the status quo, and I've been doing this ever since I can remember, literally when I was a little kid, I was doing the same thing. And I've just always felt like the answers that were given when it comes to our creation in the beginning is so limited and so watered down and so human-like. People say, "Oh, this book right here, this Holy Bible, this is from God's divine hand." God worked through people to write these books, and then they decided to compile them together. And and then I read the Old Testament, and I read these parts about how God would tell his people to kill men, women, and children. And I'm just like, how would a creator of all do that? How does that make sense? And people would say, well, he gives you free choice. So you have an opportunity to make a decision to burn in hell for eternity if you want to. That's your free choice. And okay. So, the more research I did into these ancient texts that are compiled and put in the Holy Bible, and for those of you that say, "Oh, Rex, you need to read the King James Bible. That's the only one that's real." Well, I've read the King James Bible. I've read all 66 books in the modern King James Version Bible. And then a lot of times those same people will say, "And you know what, Rex? Anybody that's a Freemason is evil and satanic and they're going to burn in hell." Well, did you know that King James was a Freemason? And did you know that I can verify that? And I can even show you the mural in Scotland where he became a Freemason. And I don't even care. I don't care if you're a Freemason. I don't care if you're a Jesuit. I don't care if you're a part of a mystery school. That means you're probably looking for enlightenment. Now, are there people out there that are bad apples in places of good growing fruit? Yes, absolutely. There's bad apples just about everywhere. So I think that the media does a really good job labeling one person or a few people, that group of bad apples, and making everybody look bad. And you really need to dive into where these texts actually come from. So I remember researching and reading and hearing a lot of chatter when I really started doing research on the internet, maybe, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And people would talk about how, "Oh, well, stuff in the Bible is from the Sumerian text anyway. The stuff in the Bible is from the Egyptian Book of the Dead." But they don't even know what the Sumerian texts are. They don't even know really what the Book of Dead is. They just heard that before on the internet, so they repeat it. And there's so many repeaters out there that it just drove me mad. So I just decided, you know what? I'm going to do the research myself because that's how I can talk about things instead of just repeating stuff. And I really started diving deep into these Sumerian texts. I've read, I would say at least 100 of these Sumerian texts that were translated via Oxford scholars. And I think one of the nice things about not reading these Zechariah Sitchin books yet is I can have a perspective of what the scholars looked at these texts as versus what somebody that, put together some amazing books and literally changed people's minds on the way they were created. And he has a huge influence over society still to this day, Zechariah Sitchin, whether you love him or hate him. So I think it's good that I can actually look at the scholar side. And now I'm actually going to read through his books and see the comparisons. Now, what I can tell you folks is for those of you out there that say Nibiru isn't real, Well, the Sumerians certainly looked at Nibiru as real. But on top of that, I don't think that there's a 3,600-year cycle, doom cycle to Nibiru. As a matter of fact, I can't even verify Nibiru is anything more yet than a city in northeast North America. Now, there's many of texts that are in these Sumerian translations that talk about Nibiru also being in the heavens and the primeval city of the creator, the primeval city where the creation of the gods that decide the fates of the black-headed people is. And they often refer to the manipulation of the black-headed people. And you see all these ancient texts that show these beings as being larger than the other little earthlings, the little humans, and it also shows them to have a higher status. So my question is, did these demigods, the Anunnaki, and also if you talk to a Sumerian scholar about the Anunnaki folks, make sure to use the term that they would use, the Akkadians, because the Akkadians are the Anunnaki. You know, so oh, the Anunnaki aren't real. Zechariah Sitchin made that all up. Well, the Anunnaki are the Akkadians. They're one and of the same. And then you could even go back and read about the Errata people that talked about the Anunnaki that predate the Sumerians by at least 20,000 years. So we're going back to 27,000 BC right now, folks. And these are the guys that built Göbekli Tepe, these amazing temples of antiquity that people call the oldest temples in the world. I don't think they're the oldest. I think they're the oldest that the public knows about in most realms. I will tell you this, it's fascinating. And then for the people to say, oh, well, they could build those temples, but they didn't read and they didn't write. How does that make logical sense, folks? So when you start to kind of connect the dots about these Sumerian gods and these deities, a lot of these readings that I've read talk about cosmic events, talk about solar events, and they will use people that have specific positions of power, you know, a certain status. Like, for example, if you work for a Fortune 500 company or a Fortune 100 company, I worked for a Fortune 100 company for several years, and there was project managers, district managers. There was, all sorts of different managers and CFOs and CEOs and everything in between. So maybe when these people read these texts and it talks about Enki and Enlil, a lot of times they'll get confused about if that's one person or if that's an actual deity. Well, it's several things. Enlil is not only a deity, but it's also a title, and it's also in reference to what is going on in the heavens, what's going on in the skies. So when you read these Sumerian texts that sound like plays and songs and stories, well, what they're doing is they're mimicking the stars, and they're linking people that have high positions of power at the time to those energy sources in the heavens. That is a form of invocation. That is a form of magic that's been around since the beginning of time, most likely, where people will see what goes on in the stars in the heavens, and they'll look at them as angelic or different energy sources, because in a sense it really is. In a sense, it's really our cosmic DNA, whether you want to accept that or not. What goes on in the stars influences us here on Earth. We're all connected at the quantum level, at a frequency-based aspect.
I'd like to take a segue, because when you've been going through this kind of rehashing of ancient texts and everything like that, is there ever references to human consciousness? And do we actually have the ability in our consciousness to, I don't know, create matter even, or do things like that? Is that part of what you've learned?
Not necessarily through the Sumerian stuff. What I've learned through the Sumerian stuff is actually, I mean, man, there's just so many incredible links, Steve. I could actually probably do a 4-hour show or longer talking about the connections of these characters that go throughout history, such as Isis, Ishtar, and Nana. If you read this 7,000-year-old text about how she went to the underworld, she went to the netherworld for 3 nights and 3 days. And then it talked about how one of her followers, she said, you need to stay here and you need to cut yourself up. You need to lash your eyeballs. You need to lash your buttocks. You need to cut yourself all over the place. And if I can't make it back from the netherworld, you need to get me back. So then there was references to the wood pegging of Jesus to the cross, but in a different symbolic aspect. There's all these metaphors. And then she goes to the netherworld for 3 nights and 3 days, just like Jesus did. So it's just bizarre, all of these connections and these stories that have been told with different names and different solstice. And what you just said, Steve, I'm going to intertwine, because you said, well, is there I guess in a sense, yeah, consciousness, it does give you an idea, the more you read these things, how these people, especially thousands of years ago, would take the consciousness of the stars and they would mimic it here on Earth. And can you create things via mind? Well, let's look at the double slit experiment, where if you take a light source and you put the double slit on a piece of paper and you put that flashlight into that light source, it's going to come out in a frequency and a particle. So it's literally coming out of both frequency and particle. And then with your mind, you can manipulate which side you want to be a frequency or a particle. So it's just fascinating. And then you get into the possibility. And yeah, I guess, you know what, here's another thing, Steve, you're right, because it does talk about how, and this connects with Gnostic texts, this connects with even the Christian texts about how in Revelation, when you read in Revelation, it says the number of man is 6 threefold. The number of man is 6 threefold. That is in my opinion, especially after you read these suppressed Vatican Gnostic texts that were almost completely destroyed, talks about the carbon atom, which is 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. So maybe there's a link there with the 666. And then the Gnostics feel that the demon, the mother demon of all, is matter. And that the original copy of Adam was actually a light being that wasn't stuck in a mortal body. And it was the demiurge that tricked Adam after they created Adam. And they realized Adam was greater than they were. They freaked out and they tricked Adam into going into this physical body, into this mortal body. And the Gnostics even talk about how they're still attacked to this day. And Adam and Eve and their bloodline is still suppressed to this day because of the hegemony that the demiurge did not want to lose. And you read about these texts in the Greek mythos, the Sumerian mythos, you read about it in the Egyptian mythos, and it all connects. So where does that mean that actually happened? I mean, that would make the most logical sense. Or were there these time travelers that were like wanting to create some type of tabloids? You know, like, oh, let's just make a bunch of crap up and so people don't know what to do. Or was there a race that literally came from Nibiru? And I want to talk a little bit more about Nibiru because I think this is important. I do feel that there could be a Nibiru from either the Pleiades star system or from the Sirius star system. And here's why. When you look at these Sumerian tablets that show like 7 dots, the 7 stars, the 7 Pleiades, that's the cluster of the 7 sisters, one of the brightest areas in the stars. And then you'll also see this huge star that is most likely Sirius. And then you'll see Orion's belt. You'll see the 3 stars that connect with Orion's belt. Then you find out the Great Pyramids of Egypt and the Great Pyramids in Mexico link up to Orion's belt. So it's just fascinating when you find all of this and you kind of intertwine it all together, and it makes you realize that these writings doesn't mean that stuff didn't happen, because a lot of stuff in the Bible, in the Old Testament, the New Testament, I feel actually did happen. But the scribes that are writing this stuff down, they're either translating it from an older set of texts, or they're seeing something happen with their eyes that they don't know how to explain, and they're doing their best to explain it. So, you know, I believe in God. I absolutely believe in divine providence. I just don't believe what we've been told about in school and what, Sunday school. And I think it's incredible. So yes, we can affect our consciousness, and we can affect the consciousness around us via thought. And if we realize that we are connected to everything at a primordial level, and everything is a frequency, this is a denser frequency, this is a lower vibrational frequency that we are currently in. Once we think something, we create it at some level. It's there somewhere. Now we just have to bring it down into this denser form and bring ourselves up into that higher form. And I love what Wayne sent the other day. I watched that video, that 60-second video.
Yeah, that connects us to what we're going to talk about next, which is, Wayne, you've been on a journey for the last couple of years. I've been with you on this journey. Similarly, you have discovered new texts, new ways to approach and look at life, and especially spirituality and the human experience. And you have, as a result of that, you are consciously trying to do something to change the fate of humanity. Go ahead, Wayne.
Yeah, and Rex, I just want to support what you were having to say. I think that if anyone would read the Emerald Tablets, they would. In fact, I have to tell you, Thros is my hero. I mean, I want to meet that dude. That's all I got to say. Because
maybe you already have.
Maybe I have. And remember what he said, that in his first journey out, that he said he came across a group of humans, an advanced civilization, who had learned to take from the ether and to bring back into the physical to build. Remember that?
I don't know. Was that in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
okay. Yeah, I'll have to read them again. Excellent.
Yeah. So in one of his journeys, when he went down into the halls of Amindi, and he left his body, and as he was going out into the cosmos, as he said, this was one of the advanced civilizations. So my journey's been much what Rex has said, Steve, as you know. We've documented, and heck, you can go to my website, the YouTube channel, you'll see that very quickly. I just want to say this, gentlemen. I have found God to be more real to me in this search, this journey, than I had literally in 40 years as being a Christian. And it was because the view that I had of God was so ambiguous that I couldn't relate to it. And I think that so many of us get caught up in that. And when the idea came to me, and I really do believe it came from the universal thought that's out there. I just think I happened to be a receptive vessel at the time that received the message and wasn't afraid of it. And this is what I think. I think God is waiting for humanity to take the first step. That's what I think. I really do. If you look from the first century going forward, you could argue that humanity has actually regressed instead of progressed. The Dark
Big
Ages,
time.
yeah. The Dark Ages, I think, did more to subdue our conscious, both on an individual level and I think on a species level. And let me add this one little caveat. 60 seconds for humanity will break the curse that was put on us back at the Tower of Babel. Because apparently, in all of the writings that I have read, the ancient scriptures, if you want to take it as a metaphor, as a legend, or an actual event, all we know is this, is that you can conclude that from that point forward, humanity, mankind, was never unified. And the gods so feared this unity of thought, for they said, if man ever unified in thought, there is nothing that they will not be able to achieve, accomplish, build. And I believe that this started about 300 years ago, this awakening. And it began to stir. And I'll end this point, Steve, to your question. The only reason why 60 Seconds for Humanity is here is because of the collective consciousness of millions of souls who are crying out for a solution. They're tired of the violence. They're tired of the bloodshed. They're tired of religion. They're tired of politics. What this collective consciousness is reaching out to the heavens for is to give us an answer. And if we could come together for just 60 seconds out of 525,600 minutes, and together celebrate for the fact that we were born on this planet, that we are a part of a species that makes us connected. Gentlemen, I ask you both, and I'll take the floor. I'll let you have the floor. Is this: when's the last time our species has ever celebrated anything?
December 25th, they celebrated going out and spending all their money on plastic stuff for plastic Jesus.
And again, I go back to, I'm not sure that mankind, I don't think you can point to anything in recent history, and what I mean in the current epoch, which would be a 5,000 to 7,000 year window back, where all of mankind came together as one and either celebrated or got together and built one big project outside of the Tower of Babel. That's the only one. And by the way, when you think about Nimrod, the guy that was vilified for even attempting, do you guys remember what they were trying to build?
The elevator to heaven.
The elevator, yeah. A skyscraper.
Right. They were trying to build their own access to the throne, basically. They were just saying, look, we've had it with the intermediaries. We've had it with the priests. We've had it with all y'all. We're just going to take and build our own direct route to the Creator.
Yeah, I think mankind was also maybe pissed off. We just got wiped out with a flood.
Yeah, and they were just like, all right, we've got to protest a little here on this issue. But Rex,
You know, can I say something about the flood real quick, if you don't mind, Steve? Just real quick, because a lot of people feel that the flood happened because everybody on the planet was evil. And that was the only way for God to eliminate these giant Nephilim and these huge monsters and all this nasty stuff. And I can appreciate your thought process, although I certainly have never agreed with it. And here's why. First of all, to put more faith in people being that wicked back then to where God had to kill everybody. I mean, you don't think there was one person at the time that was good? You don't think there was a baby that was like 3 months old that was good? You don't think that there was an 8-year-old that was just playing out in the fields with his friends that they were good? Why would God wipe everybody out? And just real quick, let me just
clear. I reject the wrath of God. It's no God at all that has to have wrath. If your God has to have wrath, it's no God at all.
Well, and see, another interesting thing is if God could do anything at any time, which I feel divine providence can, but let's say this being could do anything at any time, whatever it wants, and wouldn't it be able to just like immediately give those people a heart attack that were bad? And why would it create those people in the first place if it already knew what was going to happen, just to see it happen? And then and then the only consequence for people that use this fear-based tactic of eternal damnation if you don't follow these certain rules. Well, that in and of itself is like, okay, so this God creates us, and then he gives us free will. But if we don't follow the path that we're supposed to, which really isn't free will at all, then we're going to spend eternal damnation as a fire source. It's just, it's a neurolinguistic programming, mind control tactics. And I used to be that guy. I mean, I was raised Christian. I used to pray to Jesus every night. I used to think if I used to be able to do stuff with my mind that I didn't even like realize I was doing. And then I'm like, oh man, that was evil. I can't do that. I remember one time bouncing out of my body, having an out of body experience. I was going to sleep. It freaked me out so bad. I thought I was going to get possessed by a demon. I woke myself back up. Now, when I have out of body experiences, it's the most amazing thing you can do. I mean, it's beyond incredible. So I feel like they've suppressed our minds in so many aspects. And when you read these ancient texts, it talks about the flood. These texts that predate the Bible by thousands of years. And guess what? There's a lot more detail about the flood. And the reason this flood happened is because it talks about Enlil being pissed off because Enki gave the people that they manipulated, a lot of knowledge, and he didn't like it. They were crying up to the heavens, and they weren't able to control the people that well. So what did he do? Boom! Flood. Wiped them out. That's why the flood happened. It wasn't because everybody was evil. It was because the person that manipulated those people at the time didn't like where they were going and didn't like the abilities they had. So he wanted to wipe them out. Now, was there evil stuff going on back then? Sure, probably. I mean, geez, people think we're closer to the end of the world now than we were in the 14 and 1800s. Did you guys see that podcast I just did on what happened with if you were labeled as a witch or if you were a pretty lady and you were labeled as a witch? Do you know what kind of torture they put you through? It was disgusting, man. Absolutely, like Saw on steroids. Just disgusting. I'm like, oh, it's in the name of God. It's in the name of Jesus. And these people thought they were doing the right thing by literally putting somebody on hot coals and stabbing their eyeballs out while they were saying, no, I didn't do anything. I'm not a witch. I'm not a witch. They would have to say they were a witch so they wouldn't get tortured anymore, hopefully. It was bizarre. Pardon me. That was my quick rant.
No, I tell you, the Chaldean text, if people just simply read the Chaldean account of Genesis, they would begin to understand that where the Semitics got their story from. And that's not, I think, a diss on anybody. It's just history. And by the way, I want to say this. I think that we have come into this time now where our technology has brought more knowledge to the surface. And this is what I say to all the naysayers that, particularly want to make the Bible this sacred book, is listen, our technology now allows us to see into the earth. Our technology now allows us to see outside of the earth. This was not available 200 years ago, nor was it available 1,500 years ago when these books were being assembled. Today, humanity can look at our past that has been purposely hidden, destroyed, or altered. And what the problem is with our collective consciousness is that we're now having two conflicts. We're seeing the evidence that we're digging up, but the evidence is contradicting our belief systems. And there we have the cognitive disconnect. And I think that that's, again, we're 60 seconds for humanity. So, gentlemen, I believe that if we as a species began to train our young, and I'm talking about at the age of 2, to begin to understand their soul, to begin to understand what the soul is, what is the journey of life that we're here to do. If we were to nurture that, I dare say, gentlemen, we would enter into, I think, a whole new era for mankind.
I love the idea, the 60-second idea. That's just brilliant because it's 1 minute and you put we put a time and date on the calendar. The more people, and then also, you guys, this should be done like once a week and just see where it goes. I think about the experiments Coast to Coast used to do, where they would do those mass consciousness experiments. And Coast to Coast reaches millions of people. Or yeah, I mean, they reach people all over the world. They've got like
Rex,
400 or something stations.
Making this an annual celebration for mankind. The date that keeps coming to me is 11/11, November 11th. That this would be a day that mankind would set aside as to celebrate mankind. It's not a religious thing. It's not a political thing. It's nothing more than to live in harmony. And if we could focus in on that thought and make it an annual event, I tell you, I dare say that I believe there would be a celebration breaking out, gentlemen. I really do.
Hey, Rex.
11/11 at 11/11.
Yeah.
Yes, you've got it.
What you were talking about with Coast to Coast were those Art Bell experiments with consciousness where they tried to do? By the way, Rex, you kind of are like you're Art Bell Jr. in my mind, just so you know.
Right on, man. That is an absolute compliment. I just feel honored to be with everybody, man, and talk to people. And it's great to have the opportunities every single day. I wake up every single day and I'm just like, wow, what am I going to talk about today with these amazing people? You know, I mean, it's great. I get schooled all the time in the comment section. I go through the comments on Leak Project and then I'll read about something where I did a podcast previously, and then there'll be another dot connected. So I'll take that and I'll start diving into that rabbit hole, and then I'll create another podcast out of that. And it's awesome, man. I love it. You know, I mean, and I've known you, Steve, for over a year now, and I've really seen you kind of evolve and go into different areas as well. And I appreciate that because, you know, we all kind of, if we stay in the same place and it becomes stagnant, that's when death arrives, man. You got to stay on the move. You got to keep learning and knowledge. That's my opinion. People might have completely different opinions, but I feel like
it's like what Ronnie
you got to move.
About, you had Ronnie on, I had Ronnie on, and we were talking to Ronnie from Get the Tea together. And one of the things, Wayne, that we were both, Rex and I, talked about was once you've gotten past the God spell, and the God spell can take any form, any fundamentalist religion can be a God spell, not just Christianity. It can be Muslim, it can be Hindu, it can be any one of them, right? But once you've broken that God spell, that whatever message somebody else is trying to program into that relationship with what we call the creator or great spirit or whatever, right? Then, you know, what Ronnie was saying, there's this other place where we still believe in God, we just don't believe in the dogma anymore. And he said that's when we become like Jedi. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And I kind of believe that a little bit. I kind of believe that there's a Jedi type, I don't know, set of arts or knowledge where certain people of light, you know, light workers rise up at the right time. And that's where I think that with something like 60 Seconds for Humanity and all the educating you're trying to do on the Leak Project, man, I just see us getting bigger and more exciting all the time. But Wayne, what is going to happen with 60 Seconds for Humanity? Where does it stand right now? What can we expect out of this?
Yeah, well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. By the way, I just saw the Guardians of the Galaxy, the second installment, and I left that movie beginning to think that all my life, what I've been taught was basically, instead of planet ego, was God ego. And we were trying to always figure out God's ego. And it turns out God doesn't have an ego. And I think that this ties into 60 Seconds for Humanity. So what we're trying to do, first of all, Rex and Steve, is that we'd like to get 1 million likes on our Facebook page. So if people would go to and it's all one word, 60 Seconds, numeral for Humanity, like our Facebook page. I can tell you, Steve and Rex, that we have gotten approval from the IRS. The name has been approved, so we're just now waiting for our tax-exempt ID number. We're looking to have someone build the website out and to host it. And since we are going to be a tax-exempt organization, we're willing to give tax receipts for services rendered. And we're going to put up on the website for 60 Seconds for Humanity, because this is going to be an annual event. You know, it's the first time when every baby takes that first step to walk. Some run, some walk, some stumble. And the fact is, we're going to get better at this. You know, maybe someone said to me, well, Wayne, what if you only get 1 million people together? I said, are you serious? That's a success. I think we can reach 5 billion. The technology is there. We can reach 5 billion people, gentlemen, around the world at the same time. And we're just looking for volunteers. Spread the word. If we begin to understand that there's hope, we don't have to take the killing anymore. And just because you may be a veteran who may be at home and because of wounded and you don't feel like you have a part, you do. You can now become all of us. And I told someone last night where I was at, they said, well, we're just an individual. I said, but the individual is the answer. I said, if we as individuals start collecting ourselves and come together with a unified thought, and she got the biggest smile on her face. I mean, this woman was in my same age, in her 60s, and she said, for once, you make sense. So, guys, that's what we are. If we join together, we can put our difference to a side. We're people. My God, I'm tired of these gods wanting human blood being spilt. We have spilt enough of our blood. There is enough hatred in this world. I say it's time that we take personal responsibility, join hands collectively through thought, and let's change our destiny.
That's what I'm talking about. Hello.
Yeah, that's all that we're talking about. You know what I mean? That's all any three of us are talking about. But Rex, before we let go, though, what was your recollection of the results of those consciousness experiments back in the day? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. They were so effective and so powerful, they quit doing them on the air.
Oh, really? Like, do you remember the example? Yeah. Do you remember?
There was a couple of weather manipulation examples where they were able to create rain in a certain area. And I'll have to go back and listen to everything because there were several times they did it, and then they actually, they quit doing it because anyway. So
yeah, well,
another thing
for a reason, right?
I got an email earlier.
Like,
go ahead, Rick. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say maybe it was just ratings because people are like, "Holy crap, these guys are actually this isn't Doom, so I don't want to watch this." So maybe But let me say something real quick because I know that many people do absolutely feel Nibiru is a planet or and hey, it absolutely could be. The more information that I do, though, I don't necessarily think it's a planet. I think it actually could be like a ship or something, because you will always see in these Sumerian tablets, you'll see. And here's another thing too, folks. There's plenty of Planet X's out there. So for anybody that says Planet X doesn't exist, well, they call them trans-Neptunian objects. They're planets. At TNO, it's a planet. Potato, it's the same thing. But it's so funny how people will try and manipulate words and stuff like that to make it sound like it, oh, that's not a planet. That's TN 364982. That's the new car model. No, it's a planet. It's a big freaking planet that's got an orbit of 550 years. So you guys, we should talk about this for a minute because I know your channel loves
before
planets.
Before you move off, let me add to the conversation. Jupiter has 60, let's call them planets. 60. Our sun, Sol, only has 9. Jupiter has 60, what we call moons or planets around it, right?
Wow. That's awesome. They're big too. And you know what? With my telescope, I can track 4 of those moons with Jupiter. And I've actually, when I did that X-Fest event, I took it out to South Dakota, and some people that went out there, we were all looking at Jupiter and these 4 large moons that orbit with Jupiter. It's incredible. I'm glad you brought up Jupiter because recently they did an article where they think when Jupiter was formed, by it being formed, it created almost like a mini Big Bang in our solar system, and it divided the solar system because of meteorite samples that they brought back because of the different time frames of these 2 elements. One was tungsten, and I can't remember what the other one was. But anyway, so I thought that was fascinating. That might explain some of the stuff talked about in the Bible about the firmament, or if I'm saying that incorrectly, I apologize. The firmament. Let's call it firmament. How's that? Or firmament. I like the firmament. But you know what? Where was I going to go with Nibiru. There's something I wanted to tell you guys, because the Sumerian stuff, if you look at the Sumerian stuff, you'll oftentimes see the winged, that thing that looks like a spaceship, and you'll connect that to Anu, the father of the Anunnaki. Well, it describes Nibiru as being the primeval city, but it also talks about it being in the heavens. And it's often linked to the 7 stars in the Pleiades cluster, as well as the Sirius star. But it talks about it being the city above all cities. And also there are several passages of these Oxford texts that talk about how it got wiped out and how it was a ghost town and desolate and sounded like some type of war, or something happened to Nibiru too. So Nibiru definitely had some serious issues. And, I think it's just fascinating when you look at these timelines of events, like you talked to Gail Broussard, and he's connected to that 360-year cycle approximately of Doom, right? Well, I found one of these planets that was discovered, which you could actually call Planet 10 if you really wanted to. I mean, there's so many planets that orbit our sun that it's crazy. You guys just look it up. TNOs, trans-Neptunian objects. Look up astronomer Mike Brown, and the guy's called Pluto Killer, but he's came up with plenty of other planets to discovery to make up for Pluto. And they have these orbits that link up with some of these different patterns. Like I remember, Steve, you showed me that really good information of that asteroid that struck 10,500 BC. And that links up to one of these trans-Neptunian objects orbits that's about the same time frame. So you look at these giant planets that orbit the sun, and you look at the perihelion of when it actually comes back around, when it's closest to the sun. And even though they're very irregular orbits, they link up kind of. I mean, I can't say to a T, but they're linking up around the same time frame of some of these events, these catastrophic events that have happened. So I have, instead of somebody saying, okay, it's just Planet X, it's just Nibiru, there's a whole bunch of planets out there that are having cause and effect. So I'm really starting to dig deep into that. And it's funny because this is one of those subjects that I really never had a whole lot of interest in until I started doing more research, and people just kept saying, Rex, it's, there's more to it. There's more to it. There's more to it. And now I'm finding plenty of data from institutions like the Royal Astronomy Institute that connect the dots to multiple planets, you guys. So it's awesome, man. It's a trip, the way that everything's moving and the planets are moving through space, the way that the sun and everything. It's just awesome.
It's just really angle. What's your angle on it, or what's your approach to it, or what's your perspective on it? And this is kind of the question that we've been asking at WSO, and I think it's been contributing to our recent growth, is we're saying, well, what's important about that? All right, so I see a big red thing in the sky. What's important about that? Well, it could be a threat. Sure, it could be a threat, but it hasn't been so far that we can tell, right, in a big way.
So let me ask you something, gentlemen, if there is, and I believe in the book of Ezekiel, it talks about a planet Earth here before man was here. It talked about a city that was desolate and the ground was heaving up and down. We know now, they came out yesterday and said that all suns have binary stars. Where's ours? They also said exoplanets are now a reality. Every solar system has them.
And I get all that, but here's my question though: is as a species living on this rock and no way to get off of it that I can think of right now, anyway, in our current biological form, what is important? Well, what's important is how do we pull through such an event, if that is going to be the case, or any catastrophe for that matter. It could be anything that could happen to this Earth. This Earth goes through changes like crazy. Within 100 million years, the Antarctic went from a tropical rainforest into 2 miles of ice. So don't tell me that the Earth isn't a dynamic, shifting planet, right? So my question:
can collective consciousness move an object?
What's important? What's most important to us as humanity? What is most important to us?
Living.
Yeah, survival.
Well, I think let's not even say survival. I think it's just life. But, Steve, let's say it shows up tomorrow. We're not prepared, but I do believe 60 Seconds for Humanity will begin to train us that maybe the day when it does come up, we could move it with just the collective consciousness of thought.
Now Rex is scared and he went off the air. Look what you did.
Oh, I'm right here. I was thinking about something else as you were talking about that, and we can save that for another podcast. But if you can literally manipulate the quantum level, then why can't you manipulate a macro level? You can change the micro level, and as a group consciousness, wouldn't that make sense to be able to change the macro level? And that's another thing too, is your abilities, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you that have the opportunity to listen to this podcast, are nothing short of extraordinary. And it's been proven and proven and proven again. And are there people out there that literally worship the devil for powers? Yes, folks, there are. There's plenty of people that admit they've sold their soul to the devil. And you know what? There's plenty of people out there that follow the light and are completely free of any bondage to any negative demon or deity or the devil or Lucifer himself, that are absolutely able to do things that you might look at as just incredible and, woo-woo, or wouldn't think it's possible. And I've seen monks literally change their body temperature to the point to where I've seen plenty of film, folks. You can look this up yourselves. At the coldest night of the year out in the Tibetan mountains, these monks will go out. They will sit down in their robe, and they will do their chants and stuff like that. And like their body creates so much heat that the smoke, or not the smoke, but the snow around them melts. And the people that are recording this literally have these heavy fur coats on, and they're shaking and they're freezing, and you can see their breath crystallizing. They're recording this, just freezing their butts off, while these monks are just sitting down doing their thing. And then I've seen these Chinese people do something similar in basement-like dungeon areas where it's really cold. They go in there, you can see their breath crystallizing. An hour into it, they're taking their clothes off because they're sweating so much. I mean, it's just awesome. And then you see people walking on coals, and some people tap into people's minds. Some people want to, some people don't want to. I've personally had out-of-body experiences, many out-of-body experiences. I've even gone outside of the real time zone into what people call astral projection, where what you see is more like graphs and charts and like geometrical patterns, and you'll see colors. It won't be like what you're seeing now with your physical eyes. But there's so many opportunities we have. And once you do those exercises, you can do mental exercises and you can do other things, but it's just like working out on a bike or on a treadmill, or working out on bench press or push-ups. It's the same thing with your mind. It's not bad. You can do what you want with your mind. It's like a car. What are you going to do with your car? You're going to be like that Simpsons episode, or not the Simpsons, the Family Guy episode. That's a whole other podcast, predictive programming.
Well, I often wondered this, medical science still cannot figure out why the human body generates an electrical charge. I also don't understand why they think that we need oxygen to live when it's only about 21% of the atmosphere. And here's the interesting thing, gentlemen. When we breathe in what we think is oxygen at 21% of the nitrogen, et cetera, we exhale 17% oxygen. So what's going on?
You guys are blowing my mind. That's what's happening here. Hey, you know what, though? I just wanted to get you guys together. I really like what you're doing, Wayne. Rex, I knew you would like it too. And I just love hearing and just getting you to weigh in on stuff like this, Rex. You've always been a great resource to me and to Wayne, and we just can't wait to just do this more often with you.
Cool. Thank you. It was an honor to be here. Much appreciated, and looking forward to the next time.
Well, I just want to say thank you, WSO. Thank you, Rex Reed for Leech Project, for supporting 60 Seconds for Humanity. Thank you, everyone that goes to our Facebook page and join it. We'll get the mobile app out here in about 6 weeks or so. But Rex, Steve, this is going to be the greatest experiment ever conducted on this scale. I'm looking forward to seeing what the results are going to be.
Me too.